Hi, and welcome to our third ever InnoTalent Informational, and our first InnoTalent Informational is specifically geared towards our STEM interns. Today, we will be covering the topic of research and development on an industry-wide level with Dr. Katharine Forth. Thank you, Dr. Katharine Forth, for coming. It's my honor to introduce you. Dr. Katharine Forth is a neuroscientist and the founder and CEO of Zibrio, which is an empowering health device that monitors balance to reduce fall-related accidents in older adults. She completed her postdoctoral work at NASA, and during that time, she co-invented Zibrio technology, which was originally geared towards astronauts who were on the moon. Zibrio actually won the Innovation Award in 2020 and will be launching later this year. This has been a consistent passion, as she has previously created award-winning balance training programs for older adults and was awarded with the Young Investigator Award at the World Expo 2000 for research into this field. Aside from this, Katharine is also an elite athlete, a world champion, and lives for the techniques and passions of preventative health that her technology company, Zibrio, projects. And so with that being said, it is my honor to introduce Dr. Katharine Forth, who will be talking about research and development on an industry-wide level.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for such a wonderful introduction. Hello, everybody. I came to Houston to do my PhD in human physiology for spaceflight, continued on at NASA, and just like you heard, that then led me into the invention that I'll talk to you about in just a little bit, and then a journey of research and development for a commercial purpose. I am an athlete. I've competed internationally for 25 years or so, and I've participated in many different sports, most recently in ultimate frisbee. I think the sports side of it, where as you go through high school and this is an extracurricular activity, I found it to be incredibly beneficial for business and for life. And so for any of those athletes out there or people who have other hobbies and passions, just know that it will all come together for your future in the end. So this is our scale. This is the Zibrio Pro, also known as the Zibrio Smart Scale. And I really want to introduce this to you just so you understand the context of the research and development comments that I'm going to make. This scale, as you heard, we invented it originally for astronauts on the moon. It wasn't actually a scale at that point. It was to go inside the moon boot. But here on Earth, a scale was a pretty good way to do it, a good form factor, we would say. So when people stand on it, you can measure your weight just like you normally would on a bathroom scale. But when you're standing, and you may like to try this right now, but if you try and stand, maybe with your feet together, see if you can stand completely still. It's a bit of a trick question or a trick statement because you can't do it. It is in fact impossible. And all those little tiny movements that our body's making, that sway, we can measure it. And you can see in that nice pretty picture of different colors, that is a sampled sway over 60 seconds. And it's going from blue to green, just to show over time how this particular person was swaying. So we've got the algorithmic side, which was very much developed. A lot of research went into that particular piece of it. We conducted that on NASA equipment that cost $70,000. And then we quickly whistled it down to something that eventually is the scale that we've got on sale today, which is $269. You can see a nice rendering that opens it up just to show you the hardware side of this development. And you can see that there is glass on the top. It's tempered glass, just like you might find with other weighing scales. You've got some plastic housing with all of the electronics inside of it. We have some numbers with a display, and the main part is the 4 load cells. those load cells are identifying the pressure. We put it all together for a single combined pressure, and then we look at how does that pressure change over time. And that's back at C, that nice trace. So A, that's where somebody's standing on a scale. B, that's kind of showing you that there's these little micro movements that people are always making. C is that trace of pressure over time. And you can see how it moves around over time. We refer to it as a center of pressure, glass on top, then plastic, holding the electronics. Then we have the load cells, which are in purple, and the feet, which are in green. Those are just plastic feet as well. So really not much to that hardware as we have there, although there was an awful lot of work that we had to do to check and make sure that it was accurate, going from the $70,000 piece of equipment and all the resolution that it had at NASA down to our $269 version. And I'll talk more on that in a little bit. Okay, so once you stand on it, we've termed it the Brio core technology. That's our algorithm. It then spits out a number, 1 to 10. 10 is the best. That means that you can balance really, really well. It's like Simone Biles on a good day. So really hard to get. Then if you score 1, 2, or 3, that means that you're actually at high risk for falling down. Now, this score is predictive of whether you're going to fall down in the next 12 months. So very, very powerful. We can also say what your risk trajectory is for the next 30 plus years. So we see differences in 20-year-olds. We've had 18-year-olds. As long as you've made it to your adult body, then this is a valid measurement for you as well. If you've been sitting at your computer too long, we will pick up on that and your score will be lower because of it. Fascinating that so many things can affect your balance, and that we can see, well, if this is where you are now, where will you be in 10 years, 20 years, 40 years, 50 years? We have those data all from the research that we've done. So of course, it's the modern day, so we have an app to go with it. The scale is Bluetooth connected, and the app is called the Zebra Balance Coach. And this is something that we've also developed to satisfy people's needs. You can see that there's tracking of the score. We also have the balance profile on the far right, which these are the 6 pillars of balance, those little pie wedges. So if your score is in the middle, you've got these other 6 pieces, which is more of the why. Why did I score what I scored today? Now, just to go back to the tracking with the graph, you'll notice that people did change over time, and your balance actually changes every single day. And if you slept poorly last night, your balance could have dropped up to 40%. If you took a spinning class, you could find that your balance drops 10 to 30% just between starting it and ending that class because of fatigue. So once you see and understand that balance does change so much, and the consequences, of course, are so great if you're thinking about falling down, now you can start looking at, well, what's going on in my life? Where am I right now? And it can help guide you as to what to do. And that's what this app does as well, is it provides personalized plans to help encourage people to engage in healthy behaviors. Okay, so let's get on to R&D. On the topic of R&D, research and development, my origins in the world of research and development is very much in an academic setting. And so I wanted to really highlight that there is about 3 different contexts of research and development. And this is something that you might consider yourself as to which path do you want to go down. If you have an interest in research and development, or if you think that it's important to build up in your CV, then it's useful to think of it in these different terms. So in a university, the pure sense of research, you don't have to have a reason for the research. It can be more exploratory. You can pontificate. You can have very free thoughts about where you might like to pursue and where you might like to explore, to try and research things, to come up with novel insights. So the university is the most freeing setting in terms of the type of research that you could do. Now, of course, you need to find the right mentor or professor to guide you with that. However, even amongst a given topic, there's a lot of flexibility to look through different sides of things. And I will say, as somebody who has earned a PhD, that going through that process does give a really great foundation to the research rigor that is something that can apply to many different realms. Okay, so what about industry? So if you have an industry, it's not quite the same situation, because now you've got research and development crews that are there to really just create something valuable to that company. If you're thinking, really hardcore industry, then this is something to make machine better, something to make a process better. So it's a very, very specific goals that you're trying to achieve, very clear problems and solutions that are necessary. And so, people who are more of the engineering style minds, they naturally gravitate to this particular side of R&D because, it's just very clear cut and suits them quite well. So, if you're in an academic institution, a lot of them have tech transfer offices, and that is to enable either yourself or others to commercialize that particular finding if it's of value. So some universities have more developed offices, like MIT is a very strong office. Perhaps more of the liberal arts institutions aren't quite as they're not generating quite as much IP in that kind of setting. So in industry, they will have commercialization plans too. Often it's in-house, and other times it may be something that they want to hold the patents to even just protect other people from entering into that space, even if they're not going to use it themselves. So the third major category, so we've got university, where you're free, there's a lot more freedom, you can really go off in many different tangents. Then you've got industry, which is very specific, really trying to solve really specific problems. And then we have consumer products, consumer companies, somewhat similar to industry, but this is now a lot more people-facing than perhaps the industrial side of things. So with a consumer, as you're trying to create, do research and development, very often this kind of research is very much to do with the psychology and the marketing piece of it. And what do the customers truly feel, and what do they need? And so when you're doing research and development on the consumer side, a lot of it is focus groups and understanding the needs of the people and how they view things and what their life is like. So it's a different approach. There's a lot of commonalities across all three of them. As I mentioned, doing the academic research really sets you up for rigor. And then if you're on the consumer side, you learn the value of finding out what the market is telling you. What does the market really want? You can come up with all sorts of great things, and you can show it to your mum or to your dad, and you can say, I've got this great thing, I've just developed it. And they say, oh, that's amazing, yeah. And then you try and sell it to somebody else, and they don't need it, they don't want it. And so that piece on the consumer side is absolutely critical, is understanding the customer and understanding your development with respect to that customer. Okay, so those were the three. There's many different products out there. I have the most experience in the next two categories, so I thought I'd at least talk to those points. Software. When you're designing software, it's very much like the consumer product side of things, where it's really important to be in touch with the users and to get lots of testing going. If you're sitting in your hole by your computer just coding away and thinking that you know best, it's not going to be as successful as software. And any time that you can do research and development that is, you do the research so you can develop it better. And the kinds of research that is really good with software is, what kind of user testing can you do without actually coding? Can you create paper versions? Can you do questionnaires to find out what people's preferences are? Can you come up with different color schemes and see what kind of mood does that create? What kind of feeling does that create for the particular user? What size button do they need? You know, what size text is the smallest possible size text? You don't have to touch the computer at all to even answer those questions. You need to get out and talk to people, show them some paper, analog versions of things, start getting their feedback, and you will save yourself a lot of time and a lot of money. I will just say on the software is that you can really iterate it quite quickly, and that is a positive of software. Okay, medical device. This is the other side of my own personal experience of commercializing with research and development. Medical devices are different from all of those other things that we're talking about. It's like a mix. So certainly for us, where we have an outward-facing kind of device, you need the academic research, because you have to have it validated with clinical trials to really show that the thing is doing what it says it will do. So we have the academic side, also have the industry side, because the healthcare industry is quite a beast, and it needs to work in the workflow, and it has to solve their specific problems. And then you've got the consumer side, which is the patient. What is the patient experience of all of it? So these two examples of software and medical device, I'm using them just to help you understand that even though, you know, I very much separated out where you might do research and development, that certain products definitely span across a number of different of those realms. Medical devices are also very tricky because you have to get them approved by the FDA. So the FDA has their regulations, and they determine how risky your device is. So for us, we had to communicate with the FDA, find out what the class level was. We are class 1 exempt, goes up to 3. 3 would be something that's very invasive. You know, maybe it's a wearable that you swallow that maybe is detecting cancer. So it's invasive, it's going inside your body, and it's also related to a very important disease as a diagnostic. For us, we're very low risk because falling down isn't a disease, even though it does affect a lot of people. You're just standing with your eyes open. It's pretty low risk. So we're very fortunate to have that low category. But with it, it does mean that every single part of our development, we have to adhere to the FDA quality controls. So we have to make sure that we are documenting every single change and step of development. And those are documents that the FDA may want to see at some point. We also have to make sure that our manufacturer, so the factory that's manufacturing our product, that they are operating under the same controls, and they're being very methodical about their process and documenting it every single step of the way. And then on top of that, we have to make sure that every single thing we say about our product is supported by clinical research. So if I say it can predict falls up to 12 months, we have a study that provides the data to show that that is in fact the finding of it. So medical devices is a it's quite a challenge in terms of research and development. It's a much longer process to be able to do these things. The quickest kind of R&D would be for a consumer app of some kind. You can quickly test those things without any worry about regulation if it's just a pure consumer device.
I would like to start by asking you something I'm very personally curious about, is that what was NASA like when you were there? What was the experience? Let us hear about that a little bit.
Yeah, NASA's brilliant. It's a great place. I didn't know what to expect. You know, I was coming from England, and you know, spaceships, you know, whatever. I had been to the European Space Agency, so I at least had some experience. But yeah, the place is amazing. You've got I'm at Johnson Space Center, so in Houston. It's a very large campus. I think it's about 15,000 people or so that work there. You have everybody's heavily badged, of course. My office was right next to Mars. So this was the mound of earth, dirt, rocks, and stones that they test all of the Martian rovers and sometimes lunar rovers as well. And you never know what you're going to see. You know, one day you drive up to work and you get out of your car and there's people in suits coming out of a vehicle that's just very large, and you're like, hello. So, you know, I think everything that you would hope NASA would be, with the excitement and the unique side of it, it most definitely is true. We had a chair that could spin people around really, really fast, and we could rotate it so you could spin at this angle. So anybody who said that they had an iron stomach and didn't get motion sickness, we could make them sick. That was something that happened in our neuroscience laboratory. Some other great things that were going on. Look, so when you work at NASA, you can also sign up to be a test subject. You never know what it's going to be. And so one of the studies I was involved in was a locomotion study, and I had to wear goggles, and these goggles were prisms, and they reversed your field in the horizontal and also the vertical. And so if you can imagine your whole world switch this way and switch that way, and then you have to go through an obstacle course and they time you doing it. I think that was perhaps one of the more fun ones that I did. Yeah, and so, you know, you drive through, there's Hangar X. That was always an interesting hangar because there were some strange spacecraft in there that every once in a while you get a little peek and see. There's Robonaut, so you had the robotic astronaut that could do some really amazing things. And yeah, I think, you know, that's the exciting stuff. The people that were there, and entering into space physiology means that people are just automatically thinking outside of, not just outside of the box, they're thinking outside of the planet all the time. And it's a very exciting place, a very stimulating place. But at the same time, it is a government agency and an Air Force base, and all of the red tape that comes with it. And you know, it's not pretty. Our offices weren't pretty, and we're very comfortable with duct tape, just like the Mir space station was held together with. But you know, it's people just getting on and doing really interesting things. That's what it was like there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I just had a question. So from what you've experienced amongst people who are like, you know, maybe new to research and development, what's some common mistakes that somebody who's new might make, and how can they go about fixing that?
Okay, so common mistakes. It really depends on which industry we were talking, which kind of application we were talking about. So on the consumer side, biggest pitfall, and I think I learned this one from Amit actually, it's not about you, it's about them. So the more that you can just survey and understand the customer, that'll help your research and development be so much better. On the academic side, what's the major pitfall? I think the major pitfall, and this is some advice that a professor gave me as an undergraduate, and I use it all the time still today. People have different ways that they'll write an essay. And for us, it would be journal articles. You research things, you're trying to write up that, that piece, that finding, where does it fit into the big scientific literature? And, you know, you read all these other articles, you know, hundreds of them, just to know where you fit, and you have to capture it all into your particular writing. So that you can communicate your research. Well, the piece of advice was forget about it, write your story, and then use the other bits to reinforce your story. Now, that doesn't mean that it's fiction. It just means that you are now creating the logical thread through your research and insight. So it may not be the right thing for all of you, but it's something that I found to be really helpful, rather than getting bogged down in everything else out there, but to truly allow that creative thought for what is the novel insight, and where does it fit. You have to create that, that view yourself. In industry, solving a problem for a particular need, you know, I think if you can go down rabbit holes so easily, and you can waste a lot of time and a lot of money doing that. And the more you can make your problem that you're solving, the more specific you can make it, whether it's asking your customer or defining it or looking at the literature. The more you can define that problem, the easier it is for you to develop it in terms of hardware, the easier it is for you to really truly understand where it fits in the bigger picture, so you can communicate your insights, and then the better it's going to fit with your customers.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a question. So taking this back to InnoTalent, I'm wondering, how exactly does a service-based company or organization build momentum through research and development? Is there any specific suggestions you would give to an organization tailored for service?
Well, what sort of surveys do you do now for the people that you serve?
Yeah, we do stuff for underprivileged kids. We do stuff for seniors. We do types of workshops through technology, arts. We do education classes. And we're about to get into resume review as well. So it's a lot of just providing some kind of supplement to the status quo.
Yeah, I mean, surveys are obviously great. Focus groups are great. If you can find out not just the superficial, what do you want to learn? You know, everyone can say, what do you want? And then they'll say, oh, well, I want this, I want that. That's great, but there's other levels. And so the better you are at extracting out these other levels, the better you can service your people. So if you can anticipate some of their needs and then question them about some of these anticipated needs, you can suddenly open up another round of service that you could provide to them.
Thank you, thank you.
So for the people that are on the call, how many are planning to go into an engineering field, perhaps, or into a business? What kind of engineering are you interested in?
There's some computer science or robotics.
Excellent. That's a great, I mean, you'll have a lot of work, so that's really good. And are you most interested in, what you tell me, what's the piece that you're most interested in with that? Do you know, in terms of applications?
I think sort of like artificial intelligence and self-driving specifically.
Nice. Yeah, and so of course with artificial intelligence, you have to put in some parameters for it, and you may need to do some research, get some training data sets, and look at how those different data sets respond before you start moving through with certain final versions of it. And so yours is a classic example of, you know, somebody who gets very, very deep into a subject, And so my advice for you would be to also then keep your head up every once in a while when you go so deep in, to take that breath and have a little scan across the width of what you're doing too, so that you can end up creating either the best robot, the best algorithm, the best solution.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in. There was one thing you said, and I think this would be really good for people with that innovative spirit. You talked about R&D from having ideas standpoint, and I just remember back in the day when I first came into tech, 1998, I believe, there was a startup called Google that had an idea and said, "Hey, we have a better way of doing this. We have a vision. We want to build a story to it." And they went to a company called Yahoo and said, "Listen to our story. Can you buy us?" And they were asking for $1 million at the time, and Yahoo said no. And so even when you hear no, the market doesn't want you, that doesn't necessarily mean the market doesn't want you. So from a business perspective, I thought I'd just add that onto to your story.
No, that's really, really good point. But you know, it's trying to work out what kind of a no is it? Is it a no that they don't quite get it? Is it because you don't want to start going down the wrong path, but at the same time, when you believe they don't have the same vision, and that you're really confident this vision is going to work, you know, you want to know when you stick with it. I liken the ideas to like little popcorn going off in your head. And so, you know, we have these ideas all the time. We don't know if they're any good, and you're trying to shape the idea. And as you're shaping the idea, this is research and development. It's more of the research side before you get to the real development. But as you shape it, you're constantly checking to see, okay, is it a good idea? Should I keep going? And sometimes you may get feedback that is a, no, we don't want it. And that may shape you to say, not a good idea. Or you may have other parts that have shaped your idea to say, you know, let's stick with this. There's something in it too. Along those lines, our own company, we had a very big Fortune 500 company that told us back in 2010 or so that nobody would want to track their own health data. So I totally agree. You know, it's you have to take in lots of different inputs to try and decide whether this piece of popcorn is it a keeper.
Yeah, so I just had a question. So how did you find the transition going from working for NASA to essentially like your own company that you are, you know, the CEO of? How was that, and what were the biggest challenges you faced in that transition?
Oh, yeah, that's quite a question. It was really hard, but I didn't know how hard it was. And I think, you know, I feel like I got an MBA in practice. And I also think it was good that I didn't know all the things I didn't know yet, because I might not have entered into it. But, you know, everybody builds up experience. And, you know, whether you have robotics and you've got a vision to be a CEO one day, you'll have that depth, which is amazing. And I had the academic research side of it, which has served me well. But I needed to learn that consumer side of research and development, and I needed to understand that industry side of research and development, and then how it applies to both software and to medical devices. So there was definitely a lot of learning. So if you have an interest in being a CEO in the future, or being, you know, high level, even CTO of a company, or start your own company, I highly recommend that don't be afraid to go deep into a topic, whether it's I want to go deep into business, into marketing, I want to go deep into sales, but also know, certainly with research and development, that the rigor is necessary. It's more necessary in some industries than others, but the more solid your research and development is, the better your company will be at the end. And so yeah, not easy, but I'm really, really pleased that my path came from the research side. but other people have done it other ways. So there's no one way to do it.
Thank you.
I was wondering, does research and development only have to happen before you launch a product? And if not, then what does research and development look like after you launch a product?
That's a great question. There is no single answer to any of these questions, except for the fact, I would say from my experience, that you want to try and develop as much as you possibly can before you start really getting out there in front of the investors, because they'll want to pick it apart and you don't want to lose that opportunity. I wish that we had been further along before we properly went into the market. So that was a bit of a pain point for us. Although there is continuing development that's occurring, and it will have to occur. So the piece that I wish we had done before we really properly went to investors would be finishing our clinical trials. It's a chicken and egg situation because we needed the funding to be able to do it, and it was two longitudinal studies. So, but it's so much easier to try and ask somebody for money when you've got a validated tool. So that's first thing. Now, where are we? Every single thing we do, we are testing and learning. So, research and development is the core of what we do. We're also, as a data acquiring device, that means that we can improve our device, we can improve our software, we can create spin-off products just from continuing development. And we absolutely plan to do that with our growing data sets. And I think that's an exciting part of IoT technologies. And we're constantly trying to make sure that we're keeping our customers in the loop of that development.
Thank you so much. I was also wondering, how exactly do you encourage creative thinking in your company as it pertains to developing new ideas and all of that?
Yeah, we hire people that are creative thinkers. That's the short answer. And I did run an entrepreneurial curriculum for 7 and 8 year olds, 1,000 of them across 5 years. And so I can answer this question from that experience, which is we try to get them to start thinking in the creative way early so that it's a habit, and that's just the way they handle their ideas and shaping their ideas going into the future. And so for anybody who's on the call here and is thinking, I don't find creativity that easy, I would strongly encourage you not to overthink it. Creativity is in all sorts of things. It's when you're doing your cooking, it's when you're doing any kind of playing, that's when you're learning this creativity, and you'll be surprised how it transfers over. So don't stress about it, just keep an open mind and just keep playing around with different things.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And I also had a question. So are there any specific resources or just any resources you would recommend to people wanting to get a better insight into research and development, whether it's books or just anything that's helped you along the way?
Yeah, well, I think it's a good staple book to read, certainly with respect to business, is the Lean Startup book. It's a good one because it really encourages people to have this experimental method in the way that they go about things. I don't know about others on the call, but my experience has been with investors that they actually don't want you to be in that mode because they want to have concrete ideas. But nevertheless, that is what's going to actually get you through to actually developing the best product for your customers in the end. So I think that's a really good one.
I was wondering, in general, what is one characteristic you believe every leader should possess? You had to say maybe top 3, if there's.
Top 3, okay. Well, grit is number 1. You need to be able to weather some storms, and again, this is where your lives doing different things really can help. If you do sports, if you're doing coding can be really frustrating. You're constantly coming up against code that's not working, and you have to keep at it and keep at it, and then eventually you get through, and you get your wonderful result in the end, hopefully. So that staying with it is really important as a leader, because if you're not going to have that, way of doing things, then the ones below you will panic. So you have to be able to stick with it. I think empowerment is a really important piece of our company. It's something that very much defines our company, and I believe that leaders who are looking to empower people generate better teams. And so, you know, that can be giving more training, allowing them to speak up, hearing their voices. But it's not just a let's make it wide open and, you know, people then just say things. It's also empowering them in a way that's going to set them up for success. So I think that certainly in our context is very, very valuable. So that's two things. I think the third one would be, you've got to get your ego out the way. Use your ego for good, but don't use it for evil. You've got to harness that thing.
So have you ever done something where you've done the research and you feel like you've had a product developed, but then you realize that when you actually went into testing or marketed or something that it wasn't? So have you ever had that? What did you do?
Yeah, we have a bit, mainly with our software, so wasn't too bad. You know, you have a sense of what would be good, and we did test it a bit, but it's hard to imagine yourself as an 85-year-old and how you would actually navigate through. And so when we actually saw the way people were really engaging with it, we realized some changes that needed to be made. Fortunately, we've been pretty good about connecting with our customers. For example, the size of the numbers that illuminates on our scale, we put little cards on the floor and we had our little focus group. They walked in, they're like, oh, that one's too small. Oh, that one's a good size. And they just went down, and we knew exactly how small we could go when somebody's standing and just tilting their head to be able to read the number without their glasses. So I don't think, okay, research and development. Our first prototype, we built it. We had an engineering firm build it, and the feet, they hadn't put the protectors on it. And so while this isn't exactly an error in surveying people, it was definitely an error in development, because when it was received, and it was actually it's the head of human science at NASA, and he stepped on it and it just cracked. Like $10,000 of prototype, we don't have any more money. What do we do? So I'm glad it was him and not me. So there's one example that we didn't really realize, that you had to protect these feet or the thing's going to snap. We put in a fix, because that's what you do, and that held us until our next prototype once we could build it. So we had another one. This was now our third prototype. I was just about to pitch. We just got everything together. It was our brand new prototype. It lit up and everything. It's really amazing. And I was going to stand. It was a 1-minute pitch in the Texas Medical Center, and I was going to stand on the scale and do my 1-minute pitch. And at the end of the minute, it was going to light up, and my score was going to be provided. So it would have been amazing. But literally seconds before I was going to pick it up and go, my colleague was screwing the screw. He's screwing. And then the loudest crack you could possibly imagine just echoed in the whole place. And it cracked all the way through. So there we are. We're trying to keep calm, but at the same time horrified. So then we're thinking, how can we stabilize it? How can we duct tape it? Of course, NASA, that's what we always do. So try that. and then we're like, okay, but we need to tighten up, and then another crack, and it was after 3 goes, and we just had to bail. And that is something that has gone down in our folklore, and we can laugh about it today.
How has COVID-19, the pandemic, affected the research and development cycle?
Yeah, I'm so fortunate that we actually finished our clinical trials last August, because we wouldn't be able to actually get in and do the testing and collecting of data that we were doing before. So excellent question. There's a whole load of research that's completely on hold just now, and new studies that can't even start because of COVID-19. So for us, because we've got through this major part, we've been writing up our results and submitting it to journals. So it hasn't held us up because we're in that phase of it. And on the software side of things, people are using it wherever they are. So we can just ask them questions about it. So, just like everything else that you're doing with COVID-19, you have to be creative to solve what's going on. We ended up we actually had a new product come out in April. We have an online course for personal trainers to teach them balance health and how to structure a balanced training program. It was a huge hit. In 2 weeks, we made $14,000. So, it's when you have situations like this, you'll have negative things happening and you'll have positive things happening. I've heard people refer to it as it's now a land grab, as to everyone's trying to be the ones that can, stake a claim in this new world. And so we're definitely in the thick of that as well. So while we can't do the clinical research, but fortunately we don't have to right now, we have been able to do some other testing and learning. And when you're talking about research and development, it's not always just research for the development purpose. It's also research to make sure that your product is selling and your message is the right kind of message. So business research. Great question.
So I know women in STEM is a big thing, especially these days. So I was wondering if being a woman in R&D, what you see as the opportunities versus the challenges in the field, being a woman.
Yeah, and I won't sugarcoat this one. There's different industries that do better. And NASA is actually very forward thinking in the way that they've handled gender. They've been excellent for decades. So I didn't realize how much of a bubble I was in. And then as I came into the business world, it was a bit shocking. So as a female founder trying to raise money, for example, 2% of all venture capitalist money is going to female-led companies, which is not very good, and makes it hard to raise money. So in terms of the R&D side of it, you're always trying to overcome different stereotypes. Whoever we are, there are biases that are being placed on us. And you may be perceived as being the salesperson and not the one who knows the content. When people find out I'm the CEO, they just then assume, well, okay, you were clearly just some business person. No, I'm the co-inventor and co-founder. And suddenly there's a bit of surprise, and it's a real shame. Things are shifting. They can't shift quickly enough, in my opinion. But I think if you at least are aware of those biases, you can then extend yourself to then really. I think there is opportunities there. And I don't want to be too flippant with this because it's a really serious topic, and I think that there's a lot of supporters, and you kind of find where those supporters are, and they really are interested in trying to lift you up, and I think that's quite a good strategy, whether it's particular groups or organizations, whether it's particular people. the head of human science at NASA, absolutely amazing, absolutely amazing. I had 2 children while I was doing my postdoc, and while this may not mean loads to you, I was able to have my children at NASA with me. He also would come to a playground and we would talk science, so that because there are times when you can't take a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old into NASA. They have their own SWAT team, like I said before. So you know, you find the allies in the group, and so where you may have one person who can be really sexist and annoying, you'll have somebody who's lovely and amazing and empowering. And so if you know that you're going to come into contact with both types of people, and just try and identify them, and then use the allies to at least make you feel better when the people over here are being annoying.
How do millennials or Gen Zers successfully navigate this new world? And that doesn't have to be specific to R&D, but just in general, any expertise that you might have. I think that would be a really good place to end off.
Well, I think you're probably all doing it already. You know, there's so many resources available to you. If you want to learn a particular coding language, you can. Just go online and learn it. If you want to learn how to solder, you can learn it. And so there's actually no limit to what you want to do. And that sounds like a complete cliche because it's said all the time. But the resources, you know, the internet really does give you these tools, and it comes down to what are you most interested in doing. You can even just Google what are the steps to become blank, 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 and there'll be something there to explain it to you. So, you know, even though I just mentioned about gender, and there's going to be biases to do with race as well, what they can't stop you from doing is they can't stop you from learning the information. And if you learn the information, you can act with it. And this is the whole essence of research and development, is that if you acquire information, you can create something valuable. So that's the final piece, just to loop up research and development, and anything that you are looking to do in the future, the power is with you. Just acquire that information, and you will have the power to move forward.
Well, thank you to our interns who came to this session where we talked about research and development, and thank you to Dr. Katharine Forth for coming and giving your expertise to our motivated high schoolers, and also to, you know, everyone else who is on this call. And so with that, we can wrap up today's In a Talent Informational. So.
All right, well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for the lecture.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.